For more than 4 centuries, the name William Shakespeare has towered over world literature. The playwright of kings and jesters, of love and betrayal, of ghosts lingering between life and death. But behind the legend lies a story almost entirely erased by time. The life of his wife, the woman we've been taught to call Anne Hathaway, and the short, tragic life of their only son, Hamnet. Now, with the Oscar-tipped film Hamnet and Maggie O'Farrell's best-selling novel, the world is re-examining the Shakespeare family with new curiosity, new emotion, and new humanity. This is not the Shakespeare of English class. This is the Shakespeare of home, of marriage, of grief, of a father who lost a child, and a mother history has treated unfairly. And this story begins with silence, because history recorded almost nothing. In 1582, an 18-year-old William Shakespeare married a 26-year-old woman from just outside Stratford. She was pregnant, and for centuries, scholars assumed the worst, that she trapped him, that he fled from her, that their marriage was an unhappy footnote in the life of a genius. It was easy, convenient even, to paint her as the obstacle, the uneducated countrywoman who held him back. But what if history got her wrong? What if Agnes, the name she was given in her father's will, was something more? What if she was the emotional heart of Shakespeare's world, even if the public never saw it? The new film paints Agnes as a healer, a woman with deep knowledge of herbs, medicines, and the rhythms of the natural world, the kind of woman people turned to long before modern physicians existed. Some say she carried an intuition bordering on the mystical, a sense of the future, a sensitivity to the unseen. But what matters most is this: she was the center of her household, the emotional anchor, and the first love of a man who would later write the greatest love stories ever told. And yet, she was also the woman history ignored. As Maggie O'Farrell has said, history has treated her badly. And so, she set out to rewrite her story, not through facts, because there were so few of them, but with imagination and emotional truth. Before we continue, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can discover the forgotten human stories behind the world's greatest legends. Now, back to the mystery of Agnes Shakespeare. 3 years after their marriage, the couple welcomed twins, Judith and Hamnet. The name Hamnet, common at the time, was interchangeable with Hamlet. The boys in town with either name shared similar spellings, similar pronunciations. And then, tragedy arrived. In the summer of 1596, 11-year-old Hamnet died. His cause of death was never recorded, but the plague was ravaging England, stealing children from their parents in a single night. Shakespeare was in London with his theater troupe, nearly a 3-day journey away. It is almost certain that he did not make it back home in time for the funeral. Imagine the grief of that moment. A father whose life was dedicated to stories, unable to return home for his own son's last one. For centuries, scholars have debated how Hamlet's death affected Shakespeare. But what no one disputes is this: just a few years later, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, his longest, most introspective, most sorrow-filled play. A story of a ghost father calling out to his son. A story of loss, confusion, and the fragile boundary between life and death. Whether Shakespeare wrote it to heal himself, to speak to his son, or simply because the story called to him, we will never know. But Maggie O'Farrell felt the connection deeply. She could see Hamnet in Hamlet, and so she wrote her own grieving mother, Agnes, into that empty historical space, giving her the voice history had denied her. Agnes in the film is not merely Shakespeare's wife. She is an equal, a partner, a force, a modern woman centuries ahead of her time, intelligent and observant, grounded and intuitive. And maybe, just maybe, that portrayal isn't fiction at all. Historians today acknowledge that many women of the late 1500s were skilled business owners, healers, and traders. They managed farms, ran brewing operations, wove textiles, and created herbal medicines. Their lives were richer and more complex than the stereotype of silent, obedient wives. There is no evidence Anne, or Agnes, was illiterate, nor that Shakespeare resented her. That narrative was invented much later, supported by little more than academic guesswork and prejudice. And here lies one of history's cruelest ironies. The most famous playwright in the world, a man who preserved kings and lovers and fools in immortal verse, left behind almost no words about his own wife. Not a single surviving letter, no diary, no description of their marriage, their love, their grief. It is as if history closed the door on their private life and left us staring through the keyhole. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying this deep dive, hit that subscribe button. It really helps support the channel. Now, let's return to the haunting connection between Hamnet the child and Hamlet the play. In the film, Agnes travels to London and watches her husband's masterpiece for the first time. There, on stage, the actor playing Hamlet resembles her son. Same hair, same face, same small gestures. Shakespeare is playing the ghost father. And in the flickering light of the theater, during that father-son confrontation, Agnes realizes something new. Her husband is using art to speak to their dead child. Through the ghost's final speech, he is saying goodbye to their son in the only way he knows how, through his work. It is an emotional reimagining that brings audiences to tears, even knowing it may not be historically proven, because it feels true. True to grief, true to love, true to the way human beings cope with unbearable loss. Historically, we know Shakespeare spent long periods in London while Agnes raised the children in Stratford. We know he outlived her. We know he left her his second-best bed, which many misinterpreted as an insult. But in that era, the second-best bed was the marital bed, the one shared by husband and wife. It may have been a gesture of intimacy, not rejection. But the story people preferred was the dramatic one, the genius who hated his marriage. Yet now, as more research emerges, including a newly studied letter addressed to Mrs. Shakespeare living in London, our picture of Agnes may be shifting again. Could she have lived with him in London? Was she literate? Did she support him in ways history never bothered to record? The truth is that we simply cannot know. All we have are fragments and a willingness to imagine the rest. And perhaps that is why Hamnet resonates. It is less about historical accuracy and more about emotional justice, giving voice to those history silenced. Shakespeare's wife becomes not a footnote, but a fully realized human being, grieving mother, devoted partner, flawed and brilliant and powerful in her own right. And Shakespeare's son becomes not a name on a burial record, but a boy with a smile, a laugh, a life. And their story becomes something universal, the story of love, loss, resilience, and the art born from pain. The film's release is already transforming public perception. For many, Agnes will now forever be Agnes, not Anne. And Shakespeare will be remembered not only as the timeless writer, but as a father mourning a child. Because in the end, the greatest mystery of Shakespeare's life is not his lost plays or the authorship debates or his career in the theater. It is this: what did he feel when Hamnet died? What did Agnes feel when she buried her son? What did they say to each other in the quiet days after? What grief echoed through their home long before the world ever heard the name Hamlet? We may never know, but through imagination, art, and storytelling, we can try to understand. And sometimes that's enough.